Clip-on earbuds are starting to take over the open earbud market. So today I'll be scoring and ranking 10 of the best in a total of 10 categories. Well, at least some of the best. I've got premium earbuds, mid-range earbuds, and some of the cheapest options I could find on Amazon and AliExpress. Now I've done a lot of top 10 videos over the years, but the results in this video are by far the most shocking. Some of these budget brands are getting seriously good. As always, you can customize the scoring with my free spreadsheet linked below, but I'll cover that later. So let's get into it. Category 1 is comfort. And this is probably the biggest benefit of clip-on earbuds, the fact that they clip on your ear. This is great if you find buds that sit in your ear canal just don't fit you well. And you don't have to worry about a hook that can get in the way of long hair and glasses. Now here's all the scoring. Do keep in mind, this is just how the buds fit my ear. It's going to be a little bit different for everyone. So the cheap AliExpress buds get a 7.5. They went by the name Xiaomi M91 when I bought them, although they're definitely not made by Xiaomi. They're just called the TWS M91 on the box. So the materials feel incredibly cheap, and the issue with the fit is that they just feel very tight on the ear and you can't loosen it. The cheap Amazon buds go by the name YYK Q71, and I'm scoring them an 8 out of 10. The buds themselves feel very cheap. They're pretty massive, but surprisingly pretty comfortable. They're also one of the few buds that allow you to loosen or tighten the fit. Next we have the QCY Crosskey C30, Soundcore C40i, and Tozo Open Ear Ring, all with a score of 8.5. All three buds I can wear for a few hours before getting some mild discomfort, and they all have a pretty snug feel on the ear. Overall, it's pretty decent comfort. Next we have the Baseus Bowie MC1, Soundcore AeroClip, and Soundpeats Pearl Clip Pro, all with a score of 9. As we go up higher in score, the main difference I notice is just a lighter feel on my ear. So the fit isn't as tight, and I can wear these buds for hours with no issues. The Bose Ultra Open does get a 9.5. Again, it's just a lighter feel with a very well designed adjustable joint. But the Huawei Free Clip are the most comfortable with a 10 out of 10. They strike the perfect balance of a snug fit and light feel on the ear, not too tight, not too loose, great ergonomics, and a thin wire. But as the comfort kind of improves, the buds do get noticeably more expensive, so just keep that in mind. Now a bonus around here is for side sleepers. So how well do the buds work when lying on your side on a pillow? I've ranked the buds here as great, good, okay, and bad. So the great buds work really well when lying on your side. I found that I still needed to get the bud in a good position, usually lower on my ear. The good buds are usable, I just feel it more. Do keep in mind, since the bud is getting pressed against a pillow, the sound won't be even. So I prefer just using one earbud in my ear that's not resting on the pillow, and if you change sides, you can just use that same bud in the other ear. But now, category 2 is the security of the fit. And all of the buds are going to stay on your ears just fine with any kind of exercise or training. What's more important for clip-on earbuds is that the bud doesn't move too much because the sweet spot can be quite small to get the most out of the sound. For me, the sweet spot is quite low on my ear, and I usually rotate the buds down slightly as this directs the driver towards my ear canal. With this, I get a much richer sound. So be sure to play around with this because all our ears are different. Now here's all my scoring, and the Soundpeats Pearl Pro get an 8 as it's quite a loose fit even for my larger ears. So I found I had to readjust the buds when exercising with them on. They still have nice grip with the silicone finish on the inner part of the bud, so casual use, walking around, they should stay in place just fine. Now all the buds with a 9 out of 10 have a more snug fit. Not the most secure, so I noticed I still had to readjust here and there when running or weight training. The buds with a 9.5, again, a slightly more secure, snug fit. But both Soundcore buds include gel grips which you can attach to the earbuds so you can get a more secure fit. These buds will likely be the best option if you have very small ears or your ears might be very thin. But now category 3 is the IP rating. Now here's all the scoring and specs so you can have a quick look. So most buds are IPX4 or IPX5 water resistant. IPX5 is slightly better, but both are fine for a sweaty workout or use in the rain. The Huawei Free Clip also has dust resistance, great if you're on a dusty work site, but the Baseus MC1 get a 10 out of 10 as they are dust resistant and the only waterproof earbud. So you could accidentally drop the bud in like a puddle or pool of water. If it gets fully submerged, it should survive. Now category 4 is case and battery life. And here I'm taking into account earbud battery, total battery, case size, and charging capabilities. So we'll start with the thin ranking. So the thinnest cases are the QCY C30 and Soundpeats Pearl Pro. Most cases are pretty compact and pocketable though. The Soundcore cases are on the chunky side, so here they are compared to one of the thinnest cases, so you can get an idea of the overall size. Now here are all the specs and scoring, which looks like a bit of a mess, but it's easy just to show it all in one go. So the Huawei Free Clip have a 9.5 as you get solid battery, fast charge, and it's the only case with wireless charging. But the Tozo Open has the best battery life. You just don't get fast charge or wireless charging. The two cheapo buds have no advertised amounts for the total battery life with the case. They just state the standby time, which is a little bit sus, so I scored them lower. But now category 5 is controls. Here I'm taking into account the amount of functions you get, customization, and just how well the controls work. Starting with the cheap Amazon bud, they get a score of 7. You get button controls that work well. You do have to kind of squish your ear to use them, which feels a bit strange, but you get a single tap, double tap, and long hold. Sometimes a double tap would call my most recent contact. Other times it would skip tracks. Pretty strange. The QCY C30 get an 8 as you get touch controls with a single, double, and triple tap. You can control everything. You can even add game mode or spatial audio to your controls. You do need to tap on the back of your ear, which feels a bit awkward, and if you have longer hair, that can also get in the way of the control surface. The sensitivity is also not the best. I would go for a double tap, and 1 out of 10 times it wouldn't respond. Changing the sensitivity in the app also didn't help. Next, we have the Soundcore Aero Clip with an 8 out of 10, as you only get a double tap and triple tap. You can customize each function in the app, but you're still going to be pretty limited. You also need to tap quite firm for the controls to work. This is put in place to reduce accidental taps. But you can really tap anywhere on the bud, even on your jaw for the controls to work. Great if you're wearing gloves or just on the move. Soundcore are also the only brand that I know of that allow you to set separate controls when using one earbud while the other is in the case. So the Soundcore C40i also does this, but they get an 8.5 as you get one extra function, and they use a physical button, which I just find a bit more reliable, but the placement means you will squish your ear to use them. Next are the Tozo Open-Ear with an 8.5, basically the same as a QCY C30, but with better sensitivity. You can only control volume with a long hold, but it still works quite well. It's just a little bit slow to respond. Next we have the cheapo M91 with an 8.5. Surprisingly, the controls are pretty good. You get all the functions, you can control everything. The sensitivity is on the level of QCY, but you get a nice beep feedback when you press, which I like. You're also able to power the buds on and off with a long hold. They're the only bud on this ranking to allow this. Now the rest of the buds all get a 9.5 out of 10. The Baseus MC1 give you button controls, but it's on the top of the bud so you won't squish your ear. You can control everything and customize all the functions. It's just a single tap that's locked to volume control. The Bose Ultra Open have similar button controls on the top of the bud. You can only customize a long hold, but you also get an additional tap and hold for volume, so one extra function, which is nice. The Soundpeats Pearl Pro use touch controls with everything you need. You get great customization, and you tap on the driver, which feels less awkward than tapping on the back of your ear. Finally, the Huawei Free Clip are an interesting one here. You can double or triple tap anywhere on the bud, tap and hold on the driver to increase volume, or the back of the bud to decrease volume. It works, it's not the most intuitive, but they are the only bud with wearing detection to automatically pause and play your music. When you take one or both buds off your ear, your music will resume when you put the buds back on. You also get some hands-free call action, so you can nod or shake your head to answer or reject a call. The buds are also identical, so if you put the right bud in your left ear, just bob your head down to reset the audio channels, and you can also put each bud in the case on any side. All right, now category 6 is connectivity. Now once again, I'm just gonna throw you all the scoring and all the specs. So from left to right, you have Bluetooth version, codecs, then it's yes or no for the remaining 4 specs. Multi-point connection, so can you connect 2 devices to the buds at the same time? Multi-point takeover is when your playback automatically switches over to the other device without having to pause on the other device. Mono mode works when using one earbud, you're able to hear the left and right audio channel out of it. And LL stands for low latency mode for gaming. So technically the lowest score here is 7.5. I take away half a point if there's a no, and if there is no high-res codec. The only buds with high-res are the Bose Ultra and Huawei Free Clip, but not that high-res really makes much of a difference. The Tozo Open Ring has a low latency mode for gaming, but the latency is still not great even with it on. So QCY takes a win here. They have everything except the high-res codec. Now, category 7 is call quality, and I run through 3 tests here: a quiet room, simulation crowd noise, and a simulation windy city with construction noise. The simulation windy city is like incredibly loud. I use 2 portable fans blowing right in my ears. It's like worst case scenario in terms of call quality. First of all, you can't mute your microphone using the controls on any of the earbuds, and these are all the earbuds that allow you to control volume on your earbuds whilst you're on a call. Not a huge one because you can just use your device to mute your microphone or adjust your volume. But I think it's nice to be able to do it on your earbuds. Now here is the scoring for all of the earbuds. So the Huawei Free Clip have the best overall call quality, and honestly, I'm pretty impressed with most of the earbuds, except the Bose Ultra Open. They're pretty terrible, which you'll hear in all the samples now. All right, here's the call quality of the M91 earbuds in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the Bose Ultra Open in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the YYK Q71 in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the Soundcore C40i in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the QCY Crosby C30 in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the Tozo Open Ear Ring in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the Huawei Free Clip in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the Baseus Bowie MC1 in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the Soundcore Aero Clip in a quiet room. Alright, here's the call quality of the Soundpeats Pearl Clip Pro in a quiet room. Alright, now we're going to see how the microphones block out some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's the call quality of the Bose Ultra Open with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is a call quality of the M91 earbuds with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is the call quality of the YYK Q71 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's the call quality of the Soundcore C40i with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is the call quality of the Tozo Open Ear Ring with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's the call quality of the QCY Crosby C30 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is the call quality of the Baseus Bowie MC1 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is the call quality of the Soundpeats Pearl Clip Pro with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's the call quality of the Soundcore Aero Clip with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is the call quality of the Huawei Free Clip with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, now I have some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation noise. Alright, here is the call quality for the Bose Ultra Open with some city noise, construction noise, simulation noise. Alright, here is the call quality of the YYK Q71 with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation noise. Alright, here is the call quality of the M91 earbuds, city noise, construction noise, simulation noise. Alright, here's the call quality of the Soundcore C40i, with some city noise, construction noise, simulation noise. Alright, here is a call quality of the Tozo Open Ear Ring, with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation noise. Alright, here is a call quality of the Baseus Bowie MC1, with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation noise. Alright, here's the call quality of the Soundpeats Pearl Clip Pro, city noise, construction noise, and simulation noise. Alright, here's the call quality of the QCY Crosby C30, city noise, construction noise, simulation. Alright, here's a call quality of the Soundcore Aero Clip, with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation. Alright, here is the call quality of the Huawei Free Clip with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation. Alright, now category 8 is app customization and extra features. Now I will skip the low latency mode and controls because I already ran through it. Now scoring this is a bit tricky. I think the main things most people look for is decent EQ customization and control customization. So I keep the scoring pretty close here. First up, the cheapo buds don't have an app, so they get a 0, too bad. Now the Baseus MC1 get a score of 8. You get spatial audio options, but they're all pretty bad. The 6 EQ presets are decent. The 8-band EQ just makes the buds sound very quiet and worse. There's a bass boost mode, which is on by default, so with that off, the buds sound pretty bad. You also get Find My headphones that will emit a beep from the earbuds or use your last known location, but you do need to sign in. Overall, it's a simple app, it runs well. Next is the Soundcore C40i with an 8. You get nice EQ presets, a solid 8-band EQ, a low battery prompt, and that's pretty much it. No extras, but the control customization and EQ is there, and the UI is great. It's a super reliable app. The Tozo Open also get an 8. You get tons of EQ presets, or you can use a pretty decent 10-band EQ, which really improves the stock sound. Then there's the low latency mode, control customization, and that's pretty much it. Super simple, runs smoothly, sometimes less is more. Next is the Huawei Free Clip with an 8.5. You only get 4 EQ presets, no band customization, but they do make up for it with smaller extras like Find My Buds with a beep, drop detection if one of the buds falls off your ear, auto volume will automatically increase the volume if there's noise around you, and you also get the extra like the nod or shake to answer calls. The Bose Ultra Open get an 8.5. Modes basically lets you turn on spatial audio using the long hold on the earbuds. You only get a 3-band EQ, but you can tailor the sound quite well. They're also one of the only open earbuds with pretty decent spatial audio that also uses head tracking. And you get auto volume, same as a Free Clip. The Soundcore Aero Clip get an 8.5, same as the Soundcore C40i, but you also get a Find My device that uses the beep, tone options, and auto power off. Next is the Soundpeats Pearl Pro with a 9 out of 10. You can disable your controls, you have your low latency gaming mode, Movie mode is kind of like spatial audio, but sounds pretty bad. Dynamic EQ is on by default. Leave it on, you lose all the bass with that off. Then you get tons of decent EQ presets. Adaptive EQ is a hearing test that measures both of your ears at the same time, and it actually works pretty well. You also get an 8-band EQ that works well. It's just a bit slow to react to the changes. The app's a little bit slow overall, but you get a lot of options. Finally, the QCY C30 get a 9 out of 10. You get decent presets, a 10-band EQ that's a bit strange, but kind of works. I'll cover the EQs in detail later. What's nice here is left and right audio balance. Great if the buds don't sit perfectly on your ears or if you have hearing loss. Then you get auto power off, beep volume, find my buds with a beep or location. Spatial audio kind of just messed the sound up for me, but you also get a sleep mode, which will turn off the controls. And the app is overall a bit buggy. It's not that smooth, but you get the most features and they're one of the cheapest earbuds. All right, now the last 2 rounds here are dedicated to sound quality. But there's a few things I need to cover first before we talk about the sound. First, to get the most out of the sound on a clip-on earbud, really make sure you play around with the positioning of the bud. Some buds have a pretty small sweet spot. I usually position the bud low on my ear and angle it down slightly. Second is that the buds use air conduction, so the drivers are working overtime to push out a full sound since there's no ear tip creating a seal in your ear canal. So you need to bring your expectations down when it comes to overall sound quality, especially with bass compared to an in-ear earbud, although clip-on earbuds are getting seriously good in the sound quality department. But now that's out of the way, let's start with volume. So here are my readings at max volume. Keep in mind, this is measured with the driver right up against the sound meter. Not the most accurate measurement, but it works well enough. So the QCY C30 is the loudest. Not that it really sounds good at max volume though. Even the Soundcore buds are giving you more than enough volume. And if they're not loud enough, they also have an optional loud volume EQ that reduces bass slightly and increases the overall volume. So you're basically fine with any of the earbuds. Next here is my sound leakage ranking. So the buds that are ranked number 1 leak the least amount of sound. Now this is very tricky to test as well. I basically just had all the earbuds at around 50% volume, measured the decibels to make sure it was pretty close, and I took the earbuds off and just listened to the amount of sound that was leaked. So even comparing the earbuds ranked 1 to the earbuds ranked 3, it's not a huge difference in terms of sound leakage. Just remember, these are open earbuds, you don't have a seal, so even like around 60% volume, especially above 60% volume, if someone's in a quiet room near you, they're gonna hear a little bit of sound getting leaked. But now onto the sound quality itself, I'm breaking this up into 2 categories, how the buds sound below 60% volume and above 60% volume. Because a lot of the time, open earbuds will sound better at lower volumes because they're able to push out a richer sound, especially with bass, and not distort. At high volumes, for some earbuds, the bass starts to get brought down quite a bit. Now let's start with sound quality below 60% volume. In last place is one of the cheapest buds, the YYK buds, with a score of 2 out of 10. It just sounds like a broken speaker. There's no bass, not really any mids or treble. Avoid this bud. It's the worst thing I've heard. The cheapo M9 ones are twice as good, but that means they still only get a score of 4. You do get some mids and treble. It's actually not bad. They just forgot to add any bass or mid bass, so it sounds a bit like a tin can. Avoid these as well. Now in tied third with 7.5 out of 10 is a QCY C30 and Tozo Open Ring. This is my go-to EQ for the QCY C30. I think this gives the buds a much richer sound than the stock tuning. And here's my Tozo EQ, also much richer than the stock EQ. So the QCY buds do push out some decent bass. It's just a little bit on the boomy side. The overall clarity is okay. The mids are a bit recessed and you can only boost them so much. So the detail of sound is better on the Tozo Ring. Vocals more forward, the treble's more detailed, but the bass is a bit lacking compared to the C30. So half a point up with 8 out of 10 is the Basshouse MC1. I think they sound the best with the stock EQ. Here you get some really nice treble and mids. The bass has some nice punch and you get some nice mid bass that's not bloated or over the top. So overall, this is a cleaner and more refined sound compared to the buds with a 7.5 out of 10. But next is the Soundcore C40i with 8.5 out of 10. The stock EQ works for me. There is a bass boost option, but there's a bit of distortion when I put it on. So as we go up in score, now we're starting to get some richer bass. It hits a bit deeper, the mid bass is richer, the treble is nice and detailed. The mids are also forward, but still pretty natural. My only issue with the C40 is that it's very tricky to find the sweet spot to get the most out of the sound. But now we're going up a full point, so a 9.5 out of 10 for the Huawei Free Clip and Soundpeats Pearl Clip Pro. Since now you're getting a pretty noticeable improvement in overall sound. The stock tuning is fine on both buds. I found this EQ also worked quite well for the Pearl Pro. So now on both buds, the bass really starts to kick in. It hits a bit deeper, still not much sub bass, keep that in mind. These are open earbuds, but it does hit deeper. And the overall clarity and detail of sound is better. The free clip has a slight edge with treble sparkle and detail. Soundpeats has a slight edge in terms of bass. There's just a little bit more, but both buds sound great. But they are just behind the Soundcore Aero Clip and Bose Ultra Open, both with a 10 out of 10. The main advantage of both of these buds is the bass. Once again, it's richer, there's more of it, but not so much that it's boomy or over the top. I know I talk about bass a lot, but with open earbuds, we need all the bass we can get. So I noticed with any type of music, the bass just gives you a more immersive listening experience since bass is involved with vocals, percussion, orchestration, not just like heavy bass music. But of course, if you're into more bass heavy music, these buds are gonna sound better. Now I actually think the Aero Clip sounds slightly better than the Ultra Open as you get more forward and richer mids. The Ultra Open has more sparkle with the treble, and on the first few clicks of volume actually pushes out more bass, and you do get a tiny bit of sub bass. It's the only open earbud with any really, but past 30% volume, that sub bass pretty much goes away. But now we're going on to the final round, how the buds sound above 60% volume. The cheapo buds, same situation, no surprise. But with a 7 out of 10, we have the QCY C30 and Tozo Open Ear Ring. It's a similar situation to what you got at lower volumes. The clarity is better with the Tozo Ring, but bass hits a bit deeper and there's more of it on the QCY C30. So if you like more electronic music, the QCY buds are gonna sound better. But I found instrumentation and vocals sounded better on the Tozo Ring. Both buds also have no issues with distortion either. Now the Basszus MC1 gets a 7.5 out of 10. You get the same solid mids and treble, but now the bass kicks in slightly harder. It's quite punchy and has more impact than Tozo and QCY. The mids can get a bit shouty past 75% volume, but the buds are pretty loud at that percentage. And the bass retains quite well, even if you want to go to 100% volume, which you probably don't need to be honest. Next is the Soundcore C40i with an 8 out of 10. Similar to low volumes compared to the Basszus MC1, you get more bass on the C40i, it hits a bit deeper, and the treble is more crisp. There is the slightest distortion on bass heavy tracks, but you can dial down the bass in the EQ to get rid of this. Now we have the same buds in the top 4, but the order has changed around. So in third place is a Bose Ultra Open with 8.5 out of 10. Because at these high volumes, the bass is still very rich, but it does get a bit on the boomy side. It also lacks a bit of punch and impact. But when you venture past 85% volume, the volume kind of increases and decreases rapidly, I assume to reduce distortion. It's more noticeable on bass heavy songs, but that's also why the score has come down a bit. Now in tied second place, again is the Huawei Free Clip and Soundpeats Pearl Pro, both with a 9 out of 10. Similar to low volumes, the Free Clip does have better overall clarity. The Pearl Pro has the deepest bass out of all the buds and still has nice punch at the same time. The bass is a real standout on them. The mids and treble are still solid, although past 70%, the vocals do get a bit shouty. An issue with the Free Clip though is some strange effects with bass from like 70% volume to 85%. To reduce distortion, the bass kind of quickly kicks in and out and just sounds a bit unnatural. When you go past 85% volume though, it goes away as the bass gets brought down. If it wasn't for that, the Free Clip would be close to a 10 out of 10. The Pearl Pro has a tiny bit of distortion on bass heavy tracks, but it's really not too noticeable. So that leaves the Soundcore Aero Clip first with a score of 9.5. The only issue is that there's some slight distortion with bass heavy tracks. Like the Soundpeats Pearl Pro, it's not too distracting, and it's not really like a distortion sound. It's like a very quiet humming sound when the bass kicks in. But with all genres, the Aero Clip just gave me the most immersive listening experience. The bass is full, you get a nice combo of punch and boom, and it retains quite well even at max volume. These are really the bass king if you like loud listening. But the vocals sound excellent, full, natural, the treble is detailed and precise, the upper treble is a bit lacking, which is fine, but overall they just sound the closest to a regular bud that uses an ear tip. But that wraps up all 10 categories, and before we go into the final score, here's how you can customize the scoring with my free spreadsheet linked below. So on there you can compare all the buds easily. There's notes for each score, specifications tab, a core quality tab, and the personalized scoring is super simple. Just fill out a number in the importance column. That'll multiply the entire category, giving you a new total score for all the earbuds and a new custom ranking. But now the final scores are in, and the Huawei Free Clip takes the first spot with 92 out of 100. They're definitely the best overall, but I think the Soundcore Aero Clip is one of the best value options as they're almost half the price of the Free Clip and are only in second place by 3 points. You also get the best sound at high volumes. The only downside is the limited controls. But then there's the Soundpeats Pearl Clip Pro in third place by only 1 point, just behind the Aero Clip. And they're less than half the price of those buds. They sound almost as good and are just pretty flawless overall. They are easily the best budget clip-on earbud you can get right now. The only downside to keep in mind is a looser fit. If it's a more secure fit you're after and you don't mind losing some bass with your sound, the Basszus MC1 are in fourth place by just 1 point, and they're another solid budget option. And again, avoid those cheap buds. it's just a waste of time. If you really want to save your money, the QCY-C30 is still a solid option. But if you're interested in more of these types of comparison videos, I've got a full playlist you can check out right here. So check that out. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Stay picky, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.